Hello and welcome to Head On with Minas Merchant, the show that puts the facts first, the narrative next. In today's episode, we're going to focus on J&K and on Pakistan's role in it. And we're going to have 4 segments. We'll go over them briefly. We'll start with the strategy that Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval have now for J&K, with the polls, assembly polls likely in a couple of months. Then we'll move on to Amit Shah and the new Home Minister and the strategy that he is going to deploy. Third segment, we'll talk about obviously Article 35A, which a lot of people say might go, but which should go in any event. And the fourth will be on Imran Khan and his post-Washington trip and what that entails, both for J&K and Pakistan terrorism in the valley. See you in a bit. Right, welcome back. So on J&K, we've already seen in the past couple of days a spike in the number of ceasefire violations. Pakistan, particularly after the announcement of the CAPF, 100 companies with approximately 12,000 troops of the CAPF being posted in the valley, the ceasefire violation has started. But looking at the statistics, January to June 2017, the total number of terrorists killed by our security forces was 57. Now, in January-June of this year, the total number of terrorists killed by our security forces has risen to 121, so more than double. So the hard strategy against terrorism, and it has to be hard because being a soft power is not going to get you anywhere, particularly with a neighbor like Pakistan. So J&K, we have a dual strategy: be tough on terror, and at the same time we must focus on development, economic development, because Pakistan is obviously keen to make sure that the terrorism and the valley remains in a state of flux. So tough on terror, we've been successful so far, and also obviously to focus on economic development, which brings us to the next segment, which is the Home Minister Amit Shah and the sort of strategy he now will deploy in the valley in the coming weeks and months leading up to the assembly election, which is the vital issue in the immediate future. That in the next segment. Right, welcome back again. Now, as far as the Home Minister Amit Shah, who took charge just over 2 months ago, his strategy in the valley, as I said earlier, is a combination of being tough on terror and also focusing on economic development. Immediately, the polls, the assembly polls. Now, the state, Jammu and Kashmir, has 87 assembly seats, and the BJP is likely to do very well in Jammu and Ladakh, possibly, but the valley is a big challenge. So the focus has to be now on not only the electorate, but to clamp down on the sort of terror which Pakistan is going to unleash more and more in the coming weeks and months leading up to the assembly election, which is probably going to be in October and November, along with the assembly polls of Haryana, Maharashtra and Jharkhand. So as far as the third angle is concerned in Kashmir, it deals with corruption, and the NIA, etc., the investigative agencies have been very severe on the Hurriyat, the separatists, the untold wealth that they've accumulated, the family dynasts in the valley who have done very little for the people of Kashmir, but have done a lot for themselves. A lot of corruption corruption cases have emerged in the past few months and years, and now the NIA, which obviously has moved a little slowly after its initial burst of activity, must move far more rapidly to take these cases to their logical conclusion. the interrogation of the former Chief Minister of J&K, Farooq Abdullah, in the matter of the J&K Cricket Board, where there are charges of embezzlement and so on. But much beyond that is the huge amount of corruption that the Valley has been subjected to over the past many decades. We've got to put an end to that, and apart from terrorism, apart from the electorate and the elections which are due shortly, apart from economic development, it's important that the people of Kashmir get the kind of uncorrupt development and good governance that they've been denied for so long. Then we'll move to the elephant in the room, which is Article 35A. Should it go? Should it stay? Of that, more in a moment. Right, so moving on to Article 35A, the controversial article which was promulgated by a presidential proclamation in 1954. Should that stay? Should it go? It's fairly clear that 35A, because Article 370 has been diluted, it's been eroded. So the sort of autonomy that J&K has gradually been eroded over the years. But 35A now remains the one thing that the people of Kashmir are hanging on to, in a sense. Now, is that right or wrong? Let's look at that carefully. 35A denies the people of India from owning land in J&K. It denies education, admission to government schools in the Valley. It also denies employment opportunities, jobs to people from the rest of India. And it also denies permanent residency to people from the rest of India. People argue that's okay. Himachal Pradesh, northeastern states, they also do the same. There are restrictions in these specific states to ensure that their demography, etc., does not get altered too much. But the whole point of J&K is that the demography has been altered with the exile of not only the 4 lakh Kashmiri Pandits, but over the years, it's become a majoritarian state. Now, majoritarianism is bad in India. There's no reason why it should be good in J&K. So, while we're not going to change the demography of J&K, it's absolutely vital that 35A, which is discriminatory, which can be revoked or abrogated by a presidential order, should go. Because then we can get J&K more integrated into the rest of the country. India is going to be the 3rd largest economy in the world, despite a chronically socialistic and backward-looking economy or economic policy at the moment, typified by this last budget, union budget. Despite that, India is going to be the 3rd largest economy in the world in the next 10 or 12 years. So J&K would benefit enormously by being integrated more with India rather than being in a sort of separate bunker by itself. That doesn't help the Kashmiri people. It helps only those who govern or misgovern the state, and have done so for years and years, and will continue doing it unless 35A goes and we get a good government which is not reliant on feudal families, but on genuine Kashmiri people who have the interests of their own people at heart. Now, the final segment that we'll focus on is Imran Khan. The Pakistani Prime Minister went to Washington, met the US President Donald Trump. What does that mean? The various things that have emerged from that meeting, some good, some bad, how will that impact India's policy on J&K and the future of the Valley? Of that, again, in a moment. Right, so on to Imran Khan. Went to Washington a week ago, came back to, as he said, as if he'd won the World Cup, big reception. The Pakistani media thought he'd done a huge thing, mediation, got Trump to agree to that. After that, the State Department has rubbished all of that, but nonetheless, that's not the real point, because there's going to be no mediation in the Kashmir Valley. The point is, can Imran Khan be trusted? He makes all the right kind of noises about peace with India and all of that, but his track record leaves a lot to be desired. He's a puppet of the Pakistani army. The Pakistani army wants to do terrorism in India, in Kashmir in particular, and at the same time it wants to talk to India to the extent that it gains international respectability by attaching itself to India in some form or the other. It wants desperately to be hyphenated with India. Went to Washington, Imran, got Trump to somehow hyphenate it, but that's pretty much been now excised by subsequent State Department comments and the readout of the visit. But the real problem with Imran Khan is that he doesn't tell the truth. The other thing about Imran and about the Pakistani role in the valley now is the FATA is breathing down the neck of Pakistan. And the Pakistanis think, oh, blacklisting will not happen in October because they've done just enough pretending to take action against terrorists and do a pretense of arresting Hafiz Syed, etc. But that's not going to wash with the FATF. But the Pakistanis feel that, oh, China is the president now of the FATF. No, nothing's going to happen to them in October. They'll stay on the grey list. They'll continue to get dribs and drabs of the various loans from the IMF and so on, and from the donor countries, China, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. But basically they won't be touched. They don't realize that the FATF presidency is a one-year tenure presidency, which means by next June, China out. And there'll be a new president. We don't know who that'll be. There are more than 35 countries in the FATF. And whoever takes over the presidency will not protect Pakistan in the manner that China might or might not do. And don't forget, China itself is in a bit of a stew because of several problems. Taiwan is an issue. The trade problem with America is a big problem. Xinjiang, the treatment of Muslims in Xinjiang, which has drawn outrage across the world, that is a problem. It's slowing economy, the graying of China. So China is not in the position to do a lot of things for Pakistan. Even the China-Pakistan economic corridor is stuck in many ways. Balochistan, the insurgency continues. So to rely on China completely, as Pakistan seems to do, to protect it is not going to work very much in the future. So that is the overall picture. J&K, Pakistan terrorism, the polls due shortly. We'll talk more about that, and also in a future episode about Afghanistan, the elections there slated for the end of September, the Taliban back in government, which is a horrendous development, and Trump wants it. We're going to talk about that in a future episode. But till then, thank you for watching, and for the moment, goodbye.